What is up, everybody? This is your boy, Teran Rodriguez, bringing you another edition of Set Point. And as always, we have ourselves a jam-packed show as we have a lot of volleyball to discuss. As we have a special guest here, but we'll get into that a little bit later. But how about all the volleyball that happened this past week? We had Minnesota taking down Texas this past Monday. We had Penn State taking down Louisville. We had SMU sweeping Nebraska. And my guest is ready to discuss some volleyball. And I'll be discussing the AVP after our little guest and I basically discuss some NCAA women's volleyball. And we also have to pay homage to our sponsors, Planet Jerky, Premium Brisket Beef Jerky, and Seal the Deal Wax Seals, as well as iSports Radio. So, hand me a volleyball. Set Connect. Because I'm about to serve you up some volleyball action here on Set Point. This is Teran Rodriguez, bringing you another edition of Set Point here on iSports Radio. Your direct feed of all that is sports. And welcome welcome all to another edition of Set Point. Thank you all for joining me on this beautiful Thursday afternoon, Thursday morning, Thursday wherever you are listening from. Either way, you've made your way to episode 262 of Set Point. Without any further delay, let us begin. But first and foremost, Set Point would not be where it's at without IE Sports Radio providing the platform to go live on Spreaker. Please do follow IE Sports Radio on several different social media platforms such as X, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. And also subscribe to us on YouTube because that's where this is being published. We are no longer on audio. And also check us out on all of our amazing podcast platforms such as Spreaker, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Audible, CastBox, Deezer, GeoSalvin, the list goes on and on. And make sure to check out our website, iesportsradio.com, for all of your latest sports news, our blog, our pages dedicated to each show, such as Set Point, our merchandise shop, our Hall of Fame, our Fans of the Month, and all things that you will love when it comes to IE Sports Radio. For the last 10 years, IE Sports Radio has been bringing you amazing content ranging from interviewing legendary athletes, coaches, and other authorized media personnel to building tailor-made shows dedicated to all major sports stations around the country. Thank you to everyone for all of your support and for making IE Sports Radio your direct feed for all that sports. First, let's get a quick word from our sponsors, Planet Jerky, Premium Brisket Beef Jerky, and Seal the Deal Wax Seals by Cecilia B, as well as let's talk about a little of IE Sports Radio via short message. Here we go.
Hi, eSports Radio fans. This show is brought to you by Planet Jerky Premium Brisket Beef Jerky. Planet Jerky is the official jerky of the 2022 California League champion Lake Elsinore Storm, single-A affiliate of the San Diego Padres. This all-brisket jerky has gluten-free options, contains no MSG, no sodium nitrate, is low in sugar, and high in protein. Go to their website at planetjerky.net and follow them on Instagram at Planet Jerky. Planet Jerky, the jerky that's on a whole other planet.
there, IE Sports Radio fans. Be sure to check out our sponsor, Seal the Deal Wax Seals by Cecilia B. You just finished your very own wedding or baby shower invitations and you're looking for that extra special touch? Maybe you just wrote a letter to a relative or a friend and you want to add to their smile when they receive it. Then seal the deal with Cecilia's handmade sealing wax stamps for your invitations, letters, and gifts. You bring the deal, we'll bring the seal. You can find them on Instagram at sealthedeal_wax stamps and on Facebook, Seal the Deal Wax Seals.
For the last 10 years, IE Sports Radio has been bringing you amazing content ranging from interviewing legendary athletes, coaches, and other authorized media personnel to building tailor-made shows dedicated to all major sports cities around the country. Make sure to follow us at IE Sports Radio on X, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube to keep up with the latest in sports and with all of our shows. Also, make sure to check out our daily updated website at iesportsradio.com. At iesportsradio.com, you can see our daily show schedule and check out all of our show pages with personal bios to learn a little bit more about each of our awesome hosts. In addition to our show pages, you can catch the IE Sports Radio blog, Hall of Fame, Fans of the Month page, and our merchandise shop, including t-shirts, tank tops, caps, long sleeves, hoodies, and more. For now over a decade here at IE Sports Radio, we've continued to be by the fans, for the fans, and we thank you all for your support and for making IE Sports Radio your direct feed for all that is sports.
And we are back. Thank you to our sponsors, Planet Jerky, Premium Brisket Beef Jerky, and Seal the Deal Wax Seals, as well as IE Sports Radio for providing the platform to go live on StreamYard. And without any further delay, let us introduce our guest. Okay, where's that laundry list of accolades my guest has? Oh, here it is. All right, my guest is an analyst for Big Ten Volleyball, as well as ESPN and Volleyball World, as well as other platforms. And she was part of the first ever Pro Volleyball Federation broadcast between the Omaha Supernovas and the Atlanta Vibe. She's also a digital host for the Big Ten Network. And she's also been part of broadcasts on ESPN when it comes to volleyball and whatnot. And she's probably got a lot of other accolades as well. And she's a former Northwestern women's volleyball player. Gotta love those Wildcats. So without any further delay, welcoming back to the show, as it's been almost 200 episodes since we last had her, welcoming back to the show, Miss Emily Ehman. How you doing, Emily?
Good. Excited to be back. I know it's been a while, but always excited to talk some NCAA volleyball.
Excellent. And yeah, last time we had you on the show, it was back when Set Point was still doing audio. So it's been a hot minute. So glad to have you on the show. Thank you for taking time out of your super busy schedule. I promise you this will be quick and painless. Before we get on into this interview, just got to let everyone know these are the thoughts and opinions of myself, Teran Rodriguez, and of Emily Ehman, and not the thoughts and opinions of Northwestern University, Long Beach State University, the Big Ten Network, IE Sports Radio, or any third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh party organizations. Just got to clear that up. All right. So without any further delay, let us begin. So Emily, lots of great volleyball that happened this past week, particularly in week one. There was obviously the first serve showcase presented by the AVCA, hosted by Louisville's KFC Yum Center. So what did you think of the matches so far in week one, and what were some matches that stood out?
Oh my gosh. I mean, I feel like every year when we start the NCAA season, we're talking about how it was an insane opening weekend. I think back to last season, Long Beach State took down Texas in their first match of the year, and it honestly seems no different this season. We've seen number 1, number 2, number 4, and number 6 all go down in week 1. What makes this sport so exciting, especially right now, is that we're seeing really big matchups early on in the season. So we've seen a ton of top 5 games, top 10, top 20 matchups. And there were definitely a few that stuck out. I think, I was lucky enough to call a few of the really big upsets this week. And the first one, I mean, Minnesota taking down Texas in 5 on Monday night, which was pretty insane. Minnesota was coming off of a really tough loss against Stanford. It was a 15-13 fifth set. Minnesota was up 2-1 in that one. So to have the ability to bounce back and gain that composure and go up against the back-to-back national champions and just look cool, calm, and collected the entire time. I was really, really impressed with their performance, and I thought Julia Hansen was absolutely incredible, the outside for the Gophers. She put up 19 kills. Melanie Schaffmaster was just racking it up on every single stat chart. She got her 60th career double-double. I really thought the composure of Minnesota was impressive. I mean, again, their ability to bounce back. But then they got absolutely thumped in the fourth set. It was like 25-13, 25-15, something like that. And they came back in the fifth and then just completely took control from the beginning. So that was definitely one that was a highlight. I know, we were talking earlier, but another one, SMU, which, going into this game, it was SMU who was receiving votes in the top 25 against number 2 Nebraska. Now, I actually ended up calling this game from home. I couldn't get from Milwaukee to Dallas on time because it was one day after the showcase up in Milwaukee. But it was an insane atmosphere from what we could tell. SMU packed Moody Coliseum about, I think it was 3 or 4 times what their attendance record previously was. They had never had 2,000 people in the gym. They packed nearly 7,000 people in the gym, and it was loud. It was an insane environment. And SMU came out to play. They ended up sweeping Nebraska after the Huskers kind of fell apart. They normally hang their hat on passing, and their passing looked absolutely atrocious at times. SMU was serving them off the court. They were blocking them off the court. Nadie Okamore in the middle for the Mustangs finished with 9 blocks. She was an incredible weapon offensively as well. And what I loved about this SMU program was their head coach, Sam Erger, this is her 3rd season. So she's still rebuilding this team. They're joining the ACC this year. They're coming off one of the most historic years they've ever had in the NCAA. They won their first NCAA tournament match. They ended up sweeping Texas State and came into this season with a lot of question marks in terms of how well their transfers would gel. 9 of their 14 players are upperclassmen. 7 of them are 5th years. And for this program that has been building up for so many years, culminating until now, it was really, really cool to see not just the team do really well, but the fans rally around them and to see the elation that we saw from all the players when that final point happened. And, I don't think any of us were expecting SMU to beat Nebraska, let alone sweep them, but it was a really, really fun night. And I felt really excited for head coach Sam Erger and just knowing that rebuilding process can be tough, but in matches like that, it's absolutely worth it.
Yeah, that was a big win. It's astounding that you were able to call that one as well as Minnesota taking down Texas in 5. Like, it feels like a dream that I'm interviewing the color commentary analyst when it came to those matches. So someone in the comment section, Bernie Bango, the host of our Wisconsin show, he says, my Badgers, rough start. So the Badgers are 0-3, but they've lost to some stiff competition such as Louisville, Texas, and Stanford. Is it because the Stanford has a freshman setter in Charlie Furbringer starting, or is it because the competition is just stacked across the board?
I think Wisconsin went into this season knowing that they were going to have a really tough start. Their back 3 first matches are all top 5 opponents. And when you look at that schedule, I don't think it's necessarily surprising that Wisconsin drops 2 and now 3 of those matches. Kelly Sheffield talked before the season, and we talked with him before these matches, that he was willing to take that risk for his team for 2 reasons. One, because he wanted to learn what his team was about early on in the season. When you play, the number 1, the number 4, and the number 5 team in the country right away, you're going to learn a lot about where you stand and what you need to work on, what you're doing well, what you need to continue to try to improve. So that was one reason. And the second reason they were okay playing these matches and risking those 3 potential losses was for the betterment of the sport. They played in the AVCA showcase in that kind of week 0 matchups last Tuesday, about 10 days ago now. And when they accepted that showcase at the time, they actually didn't know that they were going to have extra time in the beginning of preseason to train for that. So every coach that said yes to that showcase was saying yes, knowing that they might not be fully prepared for it. So I thought that was really cool from, all the coaches that we saw from both showcases, but especially I think Wisconsin playing in both of them and willing to take that risk. Now, I think when you look on the court, to me, the reasons that they lost weren't necessarily because they were the worst team. They're dealing with a lot of injuries right now. Anna Smrek, their 6'9" opposite, didn't play during that matchup against Stanford because she's been dealing with an ankle injury. Julia Orgel, who played libero for the Badgers last season, who Kelly Sheffield wants in that second outside spot on the next to or away from Sarah Franklin. She's also dealing with an ankle injury that kept her only in the back court for the last 3 matches, unless they got stuck in rotations and she had to play front court. But this is a team that isn't fully healthy. Sarah Franklin isn't even fully healthy. Sheffield was telling us that she was about 80, 90%. And I will say, like, when you look at her and you watch her play, she looks like she's 150%. She looked totally fine. But I think this is a team that is dealing with injuries early on. And honestly, I couldn't be less worried about that team. When you have a 6'7" middle and you have a 6'9" opposite and the reigning AVCA National Player of the Year, I'm really not worried for them. You bring up the freshman setter. I think Charlie Furbringer is absolutely incredible. Right now, it's tough when you have a freshman coming into a position that is so difficult to translate right away to the college game. What she's doing really well is you can tell that creativity and high volleyball IQ is there. The execution and the strength might not be matching that yet. But when we talk a month from now, or even 2 months from now, or come tournament time, I think it's a completely different conversation of, okay, she knows what to do in what situation, and she can actually execute it. It's just her first 3 matches, and she's still getting used to it.
Very, very good analysis. And I actually had the honor of covering Charlie Furbringer back when she was at Miracosta High School. Bernie also adds, Chef or Kelly Sheffield will start cooking. Badgers will bounce back. And I totally agree with that, just because it's still early in the season. And there's probably the debate that Wisconsin is probably the best 0-3 team right now.
Oh, yeah.
But, yeah, no doubt about it. Did you want to add anything to that?
I think just in general, the only issue that this brings up for Wisconsin is potentially later in late November when the selection committee is making decisions on a top 4 seed. I would think right now that if you lose to 3 of the top teams in the country, you probably don't deserve to have a top 4 seed. Again, it's a first 3 matches and, those are weighted a little bit differently than the end, but I completely agree. I think the Badgers are fine. Obviously this is a team that expects Final Fours. They've gone to 4 of the last 5, having won the championship in 2021. Now that's always the goal for this team, but I do think they're going to be totally fine. They have the talent to do it. And of course they have one of the best coaches to do it too.
I totally agree. I think Wisconsin will be bouncing back sooner rather than later. And I think these matches will get them prepared for Big Ten conference play, because the Big Ten is stacked with a lot of newcomers. And that's a perfect segue to go into this little matchup right here. UCLA taking down number 14 Georgia Tech in 5. Now, this was an interesting matchup. It was a great win on the road for UCLA. The sets that they lost, they got thumped in.
Yeah.
And the sets that they won, they were fairly close, especially that 5th set, which they never trailed, but it was 16-14. So what can you say about UCLA and how they're going to make a big impact in the Big Ten?
Yeah, well, I think it's crazy thinking that, every single team that's joining the Big Ten now with Washington, Oregon, UCLA, and USC are all very formidable teams. And, UCLA was a program that they brought in a few transfers. They have a few veterans that are doing really, really well. Someone like Anna Dodson, I think, could have the potential to be one of the best middles in the country. I believe this is her 6th year of college volleyball, so she's very experienced. She's dealt with some knee injuries over the past few seasons that have kept her out with the medical red shirt and so on. But, this team has experience. I think their setters done a really great job, Audrey Pack, of really dishing out the offense well and making sure to get other people involved. When you have a player like Anna Dodson receiving 25 attempts and is kind of up there with some of your outsides, that's really good numbers in terms of where you want to be. So I think UCLA is showing a lot of promise. It's really difficult to take down any ranked opponent, but especially at home. or actually on the road at Georgia Tech's home in O'Keefe Gym, which also is a really, really tough place to play. It's really hot. It's pretty small. The crowd is pretty insane there. So that was a really big win for UCLA to really start the season on a good note, and also just to have that confidence that, hey, we can hang with some of the best teams in the country and we can even beat them.
Excellent analysis right there. And I think UCLA is a little under the radar. The past 2 seasons, if I recall correctly, they were the first few teams out of the NCAA tournament. And that's got to be tough, especially when you have a lot of talent and, expectations are high. And last year they had a rookie head coach in Alfie Reft. But I think this win is going to help lead them in the right direction. And they have another test this weekend, when they play Tennessee, and it's going to be a banger. So,
yeah, I mean, it's definitely going to be fun. And you bring up the second-year head coach. I mean, Alfie Reft is obviously one of the best in the business. There's a reason why he's been with the Team USA program for so many years, and now, another medal under his belt. But I think this is a UCLA program that inherently expects greatness. When you've won national championships in your past, that becomes integral to the success of the program. Of those expectations are set for national championships. And, maybe they don't necessarily have the talent to do it right now, just comparative to those other top teams. But I think this is definitely a program that looks like they could definitely be at least a tournament team come December.
Yeah, eventually they will break through and make that NCAA tournament for the first time under Alfie Reft. So our Northern California sports host, Andre, the host of the NorCal Sports Report, he says, let's go Stanford. So talk to me a little about Stanford and how Cammie Minor is just a veteran for that team, a catalyst, and how Elia Rubin's pretty much taken the reins after the graduation of Kendall Kipp and Katie Baird.
Oh, well, they were big question marks for the Stanford team. They've been such a veteran program for the last few seasons with Kendall Kipp, Katie Baird kind of taking that charge. And they have had a player like Elia Rubin really step up. She's in her junior season. They do have some other veterans that have done a great job over the last few seasons. You mentioned Cammie Minor. In my opinion, she's the best setter in the country right now. She's a 2-time first-team All-American. The way that she's able to get her hitters in good situations, creating one-on-ones, and then also allowing them the space to hit the ball. I mean, her location and her tempo are just absolutely phenomenal. And I think she's still getting used to the connections with a lot of her hitters because, a lot of them are new, at least in terms of playing. A player like Elia Rubin, she did phenomenal last weekend. She put up nearly 20 kills against Minnesota and then just unloaded against Wisconsin as well to help them get that win. So, I'm really high on Stanford right now, just in terms of the pieces they have. They also have one of the best liberos in the country, in my opinion, in Alana Ogilvy. She's done a phenomenal job. She kind of struggled passing from time to time this weekend, which normally we don't see those stretches from her. But again, she's passing next to new people. You have Elia Rubin outside she's passing with. And then Ipar Kurt, actually, redshirt freshman outside. I was really impressed with her and her ability to bounce back in that Wisconsin match. She didn't have a great night against Minnesota during their first matchup on Sunday. Really did a nice job against Wisconsin. I was leading them in kills for a lot of that match. And then ended up passing really well too, that I was pretty impressed with. And one player that I really don't think it's talked about enough is Sammy Francis. She's been kind of in and out of the lineup over the past few seasons just because she hasn't necessarily been fully healthy. Every year it feels like she's been dealing with an illness or injury or something. But when you watch her play, I mean, she's phenomenal. She's 6'6". She's a great blocker. She's huge, but she moves really well. She's lethal on the slide. Cammie Minor makes sure to get that going all the time. So I'm really impressed with the Stanford team so far. And I think what we saw last weekend on Sunday and Monday was that this is a team that has the talent to be there, but they're still developing a little bit in terms of, just their individual play, but also their connections with the setter. Once they get that shirt up a little bit, I think this is going to be a really, really tough team to stop.
Now, you mentioned Minnesota. They were obviously a very impressive team. They lost to Stanford in 5, barely, but they took down number 1 Texas. Is Minnesota a team that's going to be a tough out for anybody based on how the defense is played and how they pass and how they get the ball to their big hitters and whatnot?
Yeah, what's made Minnesota really impressive so far has been their blocking. Kalissa Minity and Phoebe Awalea in the middle did a impressive job last week. They put up 14 blocks against Stanford, 14 blocks against Texas, and those are up against some of the best hitters in the country. I was really impressed with this squad's ability to not only block up front, but then the backcourt reading behind it really well. Their two outsides, McKenna Wooker and Julia Hansen, stepped up in an incredible way. This is a Minnesota team that had question marks going into the season after losing Taylor Landfair, their star outside for the past few years. 2022 Big Ten Player of the Year. She transferred to Nebraska. That opened up kind of a question of, okay, who's going to step up for this team? And what we found over the past few games was that it wasn't necessarily just one person. It felt like everyone's play just elevated, whether it was Melanie Schaffmaster as a setter, again, Wooker, Hansen on the outside. The middles did better than we've ever seen them do. Their libero did a phenomenal job. And I think that this team, like you said, is going to be really tough to beat for anyone. And, Minnesota as a program, it's historically known as, one of the top Big Ten teams over the last, 2 decades or so. I could see this Minnesota team getting right back up there because of the talent that they have.
I totally agree. Minnesota is making the Big Ten really interesting. So let's close the book on week number 1 and get into the AVCA top 25 rankings, as there were some. Okay, so for those that don't know, the Minnesota's win over Texas and then SMU's win over Nebraska, it basically occurred after the polls were put out. So
yeah.
And unfortunately, that they won't be factored in until next week. So here is this week's poll. Sorry, I have to cut you off there, Em. So yeah, pretty much the top 5 is kind of the same, other than Wisconsin leaving and then Stanford entering. And then also we have UCLA entering that top 25. USC kind of moved up after their 2 wins. Florida State was pretty impressive as well. So what can you say about the top 25 as I abracadabra alakazam it? And did they get it right this week?
Well, I want to say yes, but we've seen all the upsets. And to be honest, to me, I don't think the poll means much until we get into conference play. Especially the preseason poll, it basically is just like, okay, how did teams do last year? And to be honest, a lot of coaches aren't paying attention to who's coming in, who's going out. For example, there was no reason why Oregon should have been ranked in the top 10 during the preseason poll. They lost their entire starting lineup and then got thumped by Pitt. I think, to me, the polls don't mean much until we get into conference play. I think they got it, somewhat okay. I would probably have people flipped and all of that. But, I think next Monday, we're just going to see so much shuffling at the top. Texas taking a loss, Nebraska taking a loss, Louisville taking a loss, Wisconsin taking a loss. You'll probably see Penn State move up into the top 5. You'll definitely see Stanford hold on to that. I think Pitt's going to slide into that number 1 spot, which I don't know if they've ever been ranked number 1. I'm sure we'll find out on Monday. I'd be surprised if they weren't in that number 1 spot. Stanford will probably come in at 2 as well. So I think, for the most part, they've gotten it decently okay. But come Monday, we're going to see an entirely new poll that's going to be fun.
And that was going to lead into my next question. Does Pitt become the new number 1? Or will it be Stanford based off of strength of schedule?
To be honest, when coaches look at this stuff, in my opinion, I think they just look at who they beat last week and then kind of go from there. To me, a Stanford team that barely squeaked one out against Minnesota and then took down Wisconsin, who is notably struggling, I don't necessarily think that puts them above a team like Pitt that right now doesn't look like they have a lot of holes. They've been rolling through opponents. In my opinion, they have the strongest, one of the strongest front lines, at least. I think they deserve to be number 1. I personally would have them at number 1. Now, do I think playing their best, they are the best team in the country? Maybe not, but they deserve to be that number 1 spot.
I love it. So I think this is such an interesting debate. I'm actually guilty of saying that Stanford doesn't belong in the top 5. And I do got to apologize to Stanford. I wasn't really familiar with your game, but I think they've earned the top 5 spot, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Now, it's so tough to put Stanford in number 1. I think Pitt, you can make the argument for either or. I mean, Pitt swept Oregon, which I thought was pretty impressive on the road. And then they also swept Long Beach State, which we'll be getting into in a little bit. But yeah, what are some week 2 matchups other than the ones that we saw a couple days ago or 3 days ago to watch for this weekend, or that catches you?
I'm actually really excited for USC Creighton tonight. That's one that I think everyone's got their eye on. To me, Creighton looks like a top 10 team. They certainly have the talent to be a top 10 team, in my opinion. I think a pretty, I don't want to say like a dominant win, but if they could get a sufficient win against USC, to me, they should absolutely be a top 10 team after that. But to be honest, USC looks really strong right now. I think this is going to be a sneaky, really, really fun matchup to watch that I'm pretty pumped for. And then some other ones, Baylor's hosting Minnesota and Wisconsin, that I think will give us a good look into how good Baylor actually is. You know, I think there's been question marks about the team as Carlson transferred to Texas and what they're really going to look like. So we'll see what they look like in this new era. And then, you know, again, a good opportunity for Minnesota to get another top 25 win, and a good opportunity for Wisconsin to bounce back and get some things clicking. I think the most excited game that I'm excited to watch is Penn State against Kentucky on Friday. Penn State just absolutely mollywopped Louisville the other night. I mean, Louisville didn't even score more than 20 points. It was insane. So I think this is a really good opportunity for them to potentially do it against another top 10 team. I'm also really excited to kind of watch the setter battle play out. You have freshman setter for Penn State, Izzy Stark, going up against a really veteran Kentucky senior, Emma Grome. So that's kind of a battle that I'm excited to watch.
That was going to lead me into my next question. Penn State just really took Louisville to the shed. Yeah. Are they a dark horse to possibly win the national championship? Because I know they got so much better in terms of like getting transfers. They returned Jess Merzik,
yep.
Merzik, yeah, sorry. And then they have Izzy Stark, who I think is a very fantastic setter. Yeah. And they obviously brought in a couple of transfers from Nebraska. But are they a dark horse to win the national championship, or can they actually contend against the top dogs?
Yeah, to be honest, I wouldn't consider them a dark horse. I think right now they could do it. They have the pieces to. Jess Merzik, in my opinion, is a top 5, if not top 3 outside hitter in the country. She is absolutely phenomenal. She can take over a match. She's a great passer, a good leader for that team. And now they have pieces around her to do it. Last season, essentially how Penn State ran their offense was didn't see a lot out of the middle. They would chuck it up to Jess Merzik, wherever she was, front court, back court, didn't matter. And she'd find a way to get a kill. You know, she was taking like 40% of the team's swings. This year, they're a lot more balanced. They have Cameron Hanna, a high flyer that's super fun to watch. She hit over 430 against Louisville. They also brought in some really key transfers. Caroline Juravicius, coming in from Nebraska. People didn't necessarily know her because she redshirted last season. She can absolutely rip it. She's really fun to watch. And then another Nebraska transfer, and Maggie Mendelson, who had played kind of a mix of right side and middle for them and would come in off the bench every so often. She's going to be a really key piece to that offense. And then again, Izzy Stark. I mean, she's a number 1 recruit coming in. She's done a phenomenal job so far, even against really tough opponents, mixing up the offense well, making sure to keep everyone involved. I don't think this team is a dark horse. I think they're a team that could absolutely contend.
Oh, yeah, I totally agree. And then Stark's sister, Angelina, also plays for Penn State, if I recall. And then Jervicius's dad, if I recall, played for Penn State, I think basketball?
I think he was a football guy.
Oh, football. Sorry.
Yeah, big family, you know, it's like, that's one of the reasons why she wanted to go there. A lot of family ties. And I think, you know, Katie Schumacher-Colley is a phenomenal recruiter as well. And to be fair, Penn State's a pretty easy place to recruit too, with the history that they have. And, you know, just really impressive that they got a player like that and got her to gel so quickly with some of her other hitters.
Now, Emily, I know you've interviewed a lot of coaches. What were some of the more tougher interviews in terms of like coaching?
Good question. You know, to be honest, and I know this is a not fun answer, but there isn't a coach that I don't like to talk to. At least I haven't had a bad experience with any of them. I think we're at a really fun place with this sport where these coaches understand the importance of media, and they understand the importance of talking to us, whether that's about volleyball or not. You know, to be honest, a lot of my conversations with coaches revolve around like what's happening in their life with family or kids, or they want to know about my life, which, you know, makes me really happy that they want to have that relationship. But I haven't ran into a coach that I didn't love talking to. You know, of course, there's some coaches that are a little bit more business than goofy. You know,
Like
not everyone is like Indiana's Steve Aird. You know, I could just shoot the stuff with him for hours. But, you know, of course, there's some coaches that just want to talk about volleyball. And, you know, I love that too. But I can't think of a conversation I've had with the coach that I didn't come out like loving or getting to know more about either them or their team or anything.
Yeah, what I meant to say was, have you ever run into that like Bill Belichick like type of coach where it's like, we're on to Cincinnati, or we just didn't play well?
You know, I think maybe the only kind of example I have for that was actually my first season calling volleyball. And it was my first time I'd ever talked to Russ Rose. And I remember just like sweating before the conversation because I'm so nervous. He's, you know, the most legendary volleyball coach of all time. And he was very businessy, which I completely expected. Sadly, he ended up retiring after that season. So I didn't have him anymore after that. But I do remember he was very businessy. We, you know, were strictly X's and O's. And to be honest, like I loved that because I was learning from him, which I really appreciated too. But yeah, I remember going into that conversation like wildly nervous.
I see. Yeah. I mean, there's always the coach that's always businessy or Bill Belichick-y like, but all coaches are amazing when it comes to interviews. All right. So we talk about some matches this weekend that are notable. Well, there actually is one notable matchup between our schools, Long Beach State and Northwestern, playing tonight as of this recording, as well as Saturday. And as some of you might know, Emily is a Northwestern alum, and then I am a Long Beach State alum. So it's going to be an interesting match, to say the least. And by interesting, I mean it's the battle of two teams looking for their first win of the season. So I don't know if you've had enough time to see Northwestern, but what can we expect from this Northwestern team this season?
Yeah, you know, they just got a new head coach. So I think they're still adjusting to kind of rebuilding the program a bit. They do have one of who I think is the most athletic and dynamic setters in the country, in Alexa Rousseau. She's a player that can put up triple doubles. You know, she goes up and she'll absolutely rip a ball on two. She dishes it out really well. She's a fifth year for this program. So she's definitely a player to watch out for as long as the pass is good. Again, you know, when Northwestern's head coach took over, they didn't have too many players left in the program. So he had to go get some through the transfer portal, bring new freshmen in. But at least from being in the gym, I was able to go to a practice a few weeks ago. And I mean, these girls work hard. You know, I thought the vibe in there was incredible. We were seeing, you know, a lot of players really elevate their game, at least from what I saw last season. And, you know, they just are coming off back-to-back 5-set losses. They got reverse swept by Pacific. They were up 2-1 against UNLV and lost. So, you know, I think this is a team that clearly can show that they can play well, but it's a team that we haven't found out whether they can finish. But again, you know, it's a new program. They have new systems in place. But I think always from Northwestern, you can expect they're going to fight and they're going to have fun.
Yeah, and then conversely for Long Beach State, they obviously had a rough weekend. They went 0-2 against Pitt and Oregon, where both teams swept Long Beach State. It's kind of an interesting season for them. They too have a new head coach in Natalie Regan, a former, I think it was like not an assistant coach, but an analytics coach or analytics specialist for Nebraska. She's also had stops at LMU and Oregon State. So, again, this is a really interesting match between the battle of the first-year coaches looking for their first win as a head coach. And I guess some X factors for Long Beach State would be Natalie Glenn, former Minnesota player. And then you have Zayna Meyer, a former BYU player, who's actually gelled with this Long Beach State team. Abby Carrick, who transferred from Utah. She was doing well before she got injured and missed the entire season. Then another interesting thing will be probably the libero. Last year, it was Savannah Chacon, who was the libero, former Purdue player. And now it was Sarah Bellucci. But then in the Oregon match, they went to Jenna Giambi at libero. So this is still kind of the whole feeling your opponent out aspect when it comes to these two. But that's kind of the reason why I wanted to talk about it, not just because I'm a Long Beach State alum and then Emily is a Northwestern alum, but I just think it's going to be probably one of the more better winless teams going at one another. But it's volleyball. Everything is pretty much fun. So
Yeah.
Do you have any other thoughts and opinions on that matchup before we move on to the last thing?
Yeah, I mean, of course, the fan in me wants Northwestern to go out there and get a win, potentially get 2 wins. I think this program needs it. They've been through a lot over the past few seasons. I love their new head coach. He's an awesome guy. So for me, I'm like, all right, come on, Cats, let's get a win out there.
Well, I'm kind of the same way for Long Beach State. Well, the last time they played a Big Ten team, that was Nebraska, and they kind of got taken to the shed. But they do have a most recent win over a Big Ten team, being Indiana, which is actually a pretty good team. They were undefeated at the time, but I digress in that regard. So, all right. Before I let you go, Emily, I do need to share this with you. So I don't know if you've seen Food Stars or any of you have seen Food Stars, but when I watched Food Stars, there was this one person that looked pretty much like you. I was like, why does that look like Emily Ehman on screen? So it's time to pop up this whole separated at birth thing right now.
Oh my gosh.
Does that look, is there a resemblance?
Oh, I can totally see it. Whoa. Well, she can look a heck of a lot better than I can.
Yeah, I was like, what the heck? So one is
that's amazing.
That's Jess Drewy, the winner of Food Stars of Season 2. She actually has a wine company called Winey Baby. So switching back to this, the one on the left talks about wine and is it a food connoisseur, while the other one talks volleyball and is super duper awesome and is willing to be a guest on this show.
And this one likes wine. This one likes wine a lot. So
I had to have that on there. It's like, this is a good segment, separated at birth.
I love that.
So anything else you want to add or any other shouts you want to give before I send you on your way? Because I know you're a very busy person.
No, I mean, I think we hit it, but to me, I'm just really excited about where the sport is going. We got the viewership back from our Fox matches last weekend, and the Texas-Wisconsin game to start ended up being the fourth most watched regular season game of all time, putting up just crazy numbers on Fox, and ESPN's matches did really well last week too. So I think it's just a really exciting time for our sport, and I'm just excited to be a part of it.
I am excited for it as well. I think volleyball is going to continue to grow, and I hope all things volleyball grows, whether it's like men's volleyball, beach volleyball, even sitting volleyball. The U.S. is actually in the semifinals, or played in the semifinals in the Olympics. So before we head on out of here, Emily, do you have any other plugs you want to give out, or where can these people find your work and basically follow you on social media?
Yeah, we see my handle right there at Emily Ehman. A lot of my content for Big Ten Network also comes out at B1G Volleyball. So we had media days, 2 months ago, 1 month ago now, and that content's slowly starting to roll out. So if you want to follow more and hear from Big Ten volleyball players and myself as well, definitely follow Big Ten Network and B1G Volleyball, because you'll see it a lot there.
Well, excellent, Emily. Thank you very much for your time. I know you're a very busy person, and you're always welcome back on the show. And I can't wait to basically kind of message you about Northwestern Long Beach State. I will be at both matches. So
perfect.
It was an honor speaking with you again, having you on camera. And again, you're welcome back on the show, and take care, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you so much for having me.
No problem. All right. So that was Emily Ehman, my guest for this week's episode of Set Point. I appreciate her being on here for the first time on StreamYard. We're going to take ourselves a couple commercial breaks. When we come back, we've got some AVP to discuss, as basically we've got the final AVP tournament in the books. And then we've also got the AVP League that's on the horizon. And we've got one more AVP tournament that's not really official, but is still very official. So keep it locked here. You're listening to Set Point here on iSports Radio, your direct feed for all that sports. We'll be right back after this.
What's good, fight fans? It's your boy, Marcus Rose Rate. Here to give you what you want. Here to give you what you need. Yeah, man. Yeah. I'm coming to you live straight from your mama's basement with a crispy white tea. They are coming to you live every Tuesday at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Powered by IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Hey sports fans, are you in the market for Florida sports or just keeping up with the latest in the Panhandle? Palm Tree Sports is a dedicated audio hub to all things sports in the Sunshine State. We cover current events, big news, heavily favored opinions all across the NFL, NBA, MLB, and so much more. So come check us out every Saturday evening at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. For a down south education on Florida sports and athletics, it's hosted by yours truly, Corey Pujols, and is powered by IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
And we are back with the second and final segment of Set Point here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that sports. Definitely check out all of our amazing shows. Once again, a huge shout out to Emily Ehman for being a guest here on Set Point. I really, really do appreciate her taking time out of her busy schedule, because she was a busy bee. She actually had an interview with, I forget the last name of the editor of Volleyball magazine, but Lee Feinswong. She had an interview with Lee Feinswong yesterday, a Zoom interview, which is something you could also check out on Volleyball Mag. And then she was also on the broadcast for SMU and Nebraska on Tuesday. And then Monday, she was on the broadcast with Connor Onion for the doubleheader in the State Farm Showcase. So again, huge thank you to Emily Ehman. It really means a lot that she was able to take time out of her day and basically discuss some volleyball with me. And all I gotta say is thank you, Emily Ehman. All right, but that is that for that little interview. So going to the AVP portion of the show. All right, so the Chicago Open, this was rather a doozy of a tournament. So this tournament had everything and then some. It's probably on the men's side at the very least. So on the men's side, you'll probably, if you saw this tournament or at least glimpses of this tournament, you will probably saw Taylor Crabb wearing socks and shoes in the sand. Now, I don't know why Taylor Crabb was wearing socks and shoes in the sand, but it was just bananas. I was like, what? So that was just quite astounding right there. So hats off to Taylor Crabb and Taylor Sander for wearing socks and shoes and playing beach volleyball. But there was also a little bit of a fisticuff, as it was, I think it was between Chase Budinger and Miles Evans, and they took on Theo Brunner and Trevor Crabb, and Trevor Crabb roofed Chase Budinger. It just went straight down. It was like, boom. And basically Trevor Crabb gave him the whole, "Are you not entertained?" And he was just like all up in his wheels, like, ah. That's probably not the correct description of what Trevor Crabb was, but afterward, Chase Budinger, he was not having it, and he just gave him a nice little, I don't think it was a angry shove. I just think he just shoved him down to the point where I think he was just saying, don't be doing that stuff on me. Because Chase Budinger, for those that don't know, he's an Olympian, but he also used to be an NBA player. So I think he's kind of used to that trash talk and to those basically, getting up in his grill and saying, "Don't you step on me, bud." So I don't think it was like an intentional thing. I don't think it was like ill will. I just think it was just maybe Chase Budinger saying, "Step off me, man." So there's that right there. But in the end, the men's winners in terms of the Chicago Open were Miles Partain and Andy Bench. So those two actually wound up winning their first ever AVP tournament. This was actually the first AVP tournament that they partook in because, remember, they were Olympians and they trained pretty much all throughout the off season, and they didn't even partake in any AVP tournaments beforehand. So the fact that they wound up winning their first AVP tournament of the season, first and only AVP tournament of the season in terms of the regular season, is quite phenomenal. And with them winning the AVP tournament, they actually advanced to the AVP League because this was a heritage event. And if you win a heritage tournament, then you automatically go to the AVP League, which I'll be discussing in a little bit. Now, on the women's side of things, may not have had the socks and shoes aspect, and it also didn't have anyone shoving anybody, but on the women's side, we actually had Melissa Jimena Paredes and Brandy Wilkerson, the Canadian duo, which wound up winning silver in the Olympics. They took down Teran Rodriguez and Kristen Nuss in the final of the Chicago Open, which the third set was decided 15-13. I give Nuss and Close a lot of credit. They were down 14-11, and then they dug their way back. I think it was like 14-10, 14-11. They scored 3 points, got to 14-13, but Brandy Wilkerson shut the door on him with a thundering kill. So I really think that was a great win. The rivalry continues between the Team Tiger and the Canadian duo. So I think that rivalry is going to stay alive and kicking, not just in the AVP, but probably in the Olympics as well, because I think their futures look pretty bright, if you ask me. All right, but that is that for the AVP Chicago Open recap. I know it was a little bit of a brief recap right there, but honestly, I don't want to go too long. I'm almost nearing an hour. Time flies when you're talking volleyball, but I digress. All right, so now for the final AVP standings. So the final AVP standings are not posted. Well, I will say the final AVP standings are as follows, starting off with Abracadabra, Alakazam. But the final AVP standings are as follows. Right there. So this is for the women's side of things. So Teran Rodriguez and Kristen Nuss finished on top with the best, well, I wouldn't say best, but the most points. Then you got Brandy Wilkerson and Melissa Jimena Paredes, and then so on and so forth. April Ross and Alex Kleiman, despite not partaking in the Chicago Open, they wound up just sneaking in to the AVP League. So and then you also see Kylie DeBerg, Haley Harward, Therese Cannon, Megan Kraft, Tony Rodriguez, and Gina Urango. No, Tony Rodriguez is not related to me. You also have Kelly Chang and Sarah Hughes, which I think is Team Trojan, Julie Scholes and Betsy Flint, so on and so forth. So there you have it right there for the women's side of things. I think it's a stacked lineup right there. I think we're going to have a lot of fun with this AVP League. And I think this is going to be extremely fascinating, and don't expect any easy matches. So we'll then move on to the men's side of things. So you have Taylor Sander and Taylor Crabb, a.k.a. Team Taylor, advancing. Theo Brunner and Trevor Crabb advanced. Miles Evans and Chase Budinger, they made it in. You have Sean Cook and Cody Caldwell, Andy Bench, Miles Partain. They wound up winning their turn, the AVP's Chicago Open, so they automatically qualified. Tim Baumgren and Troy Field, they advanced. Billy Allen and Paul Lotman, they advanced. And then look at who advanced lastly. Avery Drost and Phil Dalhouser. Sorry if my finger is not pointing correctly, but the former set point guest Avery Drost made it into the AVP League just barely, dude. Oh my God, I was so fired up. I was like, yes, Avery made it. A former set point guest will be representing, even though I haven't had too many guests when it comes to the AVP. But honestly, I was so fired up to basically hear that Avery and his partner Phil advanced to the AVP League. Oh my goodness, it's so exciting. But that's amazing right there. I'm so happy for Avery and whatnot. They obviously weren't really the worst pair in the world, but they kind of were, I wouldn't say average, but they were kind of in that mid-level. And they really need to have a good finish in the Chicago Open. And thankfully they did. So there you have it right there when it comes to the AVP's final standings of the AVP League. Now that was the final AVP standings. Now let's jump on into the AVP League team names and pairs. So this is going to be fun. I didn't even know this was a thing. So first and foremost, we have the Miami Mayhem with April Ross and Alex Kleinman, aka the A-Team. And then you have Trevor Crabb and Theo Brunner. By the way, all these photos are courtesy of the AVP League or the AVP, so got to give them their proper credit right there. So April Ross and Alex Kleinman, as well as Trevor Crabb and Theo Brunner. That's a nice little team right there. It's the Miami Mayhem, so very fun times right there. I think those are some really darn good pairs, especially Kleinman and Ross. Now, for me, I think Ross and Kleinman will be a little rusty starting off the league just because they haven't gotten too many tournament reps in, and obviously mommyhood has been a thing, but I think that they'll be fine. And then Trevor Crabb and Theo Brunner, I think they will be fine when it comes to this league as well. All right, next up, we have the Palm Beach Passion with Brandy Wilkerson and Melissa Humana-Paredes and Phil Dalhouser and Avery Drost. So my guy, Avery Drost, is basically on that team. He's basically on the Palm Beach Passion. And I'm super excited for Avery and Phil Dalhouser. Phil Dalhouser, as we all know, he's a legend in the AVP and the Olympics and in beach volleyball. And then the Canadian duo, Melissa Humana-Paredes and Brandy Wilkerson, a really solid duo right there. Next up, we have the Austin Aces. Best name ever, in my opinion. You got Paul Ottman and Billy Allen, and then Team Tiger, Kristen Nuss and Taryn Cloth. Nice little duo right there. I like that duo right there. I think Nuss and Cloth are arguably the best women's duo in the AVP, and I think they're only going to get better. They've had a lot of good finishes, and remember, they wound up winning the granddaddy of them all, the Manhattan Beach Open. So the next up, we have the San Diego Smash, another good name. The AVP really went all out with these names. Why can't the NBA think of these names? Not that there's anything wrong with the Minnesota or the San Diego Wild. So you have Miles Evans and Chase Budinger and Gina Urango and Tony Rodriguez. Again, Urango and Rodriguez were kind of in that mid-tier, while Evans and Budinger, they had themselves some solid finishes in the past two AVP tournaments, and I think they'll only get better. They're still starting to find their sea legs post-Olympics, so you have that right there. Next up, you have the Dallas Stream. By the way, I love the little logo. It looks like the Pillsbury Doughboy, but I digress. You got Kylie DeBerg and Haley Harward and Miles Partain and Andy Benish. So I think Andy Benish and Partain, their demise was greatly exaggerated. While Harward and DeBerg, they were also a solid duo. They had their ups and downs, but I think they're a very good duo, and they'll do wonders for the Dallas Stream. Next up, we have the LA launch, or the Los Angeles launch, as you have Tim Baumgren and Troy Field, or as they like to be called, TNT. And then you've got Betsy Flint and Julia Scholes, who are a very good dynamic duo. They have great chemistry with one another. And I think, I'm not trying to be biased here, but I think Buddy Julia is going to do great with the LA launch with Betsy Flint. And then Tim Baumgren and Troy Field, they have great team chemistry. And once they figure it out even more, watch out. And then next up, we have the Brooklyn Blaze. Oh, geez. Thanks, whoever gave out that name, for having a tongue twister. So you have Sean Cook and Cody Caldwell, who I think are the most entertaining pair of the AVP, but they obviously want to be the best pair, not the entertaining pair. Then you got Therese Fire the Cannon and Megan Kraft, or as I call them, Team Trojan 2.0, because they both went to USC and both wound up winning national championships. So for those two pairs are really fun to watch. I think Cook and Caldwell, they could do wonders for the Brooklyn Blaze. And then Megan Kraft and Therese Cannon, they are growing up super quickly, because Cannon used to be with Sarah Sponsel, and then Megan Kraft used to be with Emily Day. I think that was who she was previously, or Emily Stockman. And then I think she retired. So now the two are paired with one another, and they have some good team chemistry going on. But I kind of wonder if Delaney Maple, once she's done with Indiana, is she going to come back and play for the AVP, or is she going to play for the AVP? And what will happen with Megan Kraft and Therese Cannon? It's just some food for thought, because Therese and Megan have both played with one another in terms of their volleyball chemistry and whatnot, not just in the AVP, but in other like international beach volleyball tournaments. And then lastly, we have the New York Nitro with Kelly Cheng and Sarah Hughes, aka Team Team Trojan 1.0, and then we have Taylor Sander and Taylor Crabb, or Team Taylor as we like to call them. This is probably the most stacked team right here. This team, I think, is legit. You have two very talented pairs. You have a pair that went to the Olympics most recently. Taylor Crabb is an Olympian, and Taylor Sander is a future Olympian. I'm still going to stay true to my word. I think Taylor Sander and Taylor Crabb are going to be in the 2028 Olympics. It all depends. I really want to discuss that with Taylor Crabb. One day I might have him on my show and basically talk to him on if he wants to be playing beach volleyball in the 2028 Los Angeles Olympics. But I think those two pairs are going to be fantastic for the New York Nitro, and I'm excited to see what those two can do. And that's basically it for the AVP's league teams and their pairs and whatnot. So, yeah, the AVP kind of went all out with this whole new league. So I'm very excited for it. Other than that, there actually is one more tournament, which is not official, but it kind of is official. There's the Hermosa Beach Opens. Now, unfortunately, the Hermosa Beach Open was not going to be official or a part of the Heritage League or anything of that sort, but everyone and their mamas in the AVP signed a petition to say, we want the freaking Hermosa Beach to be a tournament. Don't take it away from us, because Hermosa Beach was one of the most big time landmarks when it comes to the AVP and whatnot, let alone beach volleyball. So I think for the AVP having the Hermosa Beach Open, I think it's great. It would have been great if there was more on the line when it came to it, but I think it's going to be quite fun. This is this weekend. Gameplay starts today as of this recording, and then I think it goes through till Sunday. There's going to be a lot of volleyball happening from now all the way till, let's say, pretty much November, between the AVP and between the NCAA women's volleyball side of things. So before we get on out of here, there was this news that happened right before I went live, and it was actually the Pro Volleyball Federation naming having 28 matches this season. So every team is going to play 28 matches, and I think it's going to be fun times. The Indy Ignite is a new team. They're going to be looking good. And I also mentioned that there are some young, good broadcasters from the AVP or from the Pro Volleyball Federation. And obviously the Omaha Supernovas are still probably the team to beat. And then you have the Atlanta Vibe, another good team. San Diego Mojo, it's going to be interesting to see what they'll do. But that's not until, I think, December, if not January. Regardless, it's going to be a nice little fun league. It's going to be the second year of the Pro Volleyball Federation. And soon, LOVB, or Love, is going to be starting up real soon. It's another league that I was actually informed of in advance, courtesy of Joy McKenzie Furbringer, Charlie Furbringer's mother, and former Long Beach State women's volleyball coach. But I'm excited for all the pro volleyball that's going to be had soon. And Emily said it best. Volleyball is growing rapidly, and it's only going to continue to grow. So get on the volleyball train and continue to support that volleyball. And let's also support NCAA men's volleyball. I also talked about this on X Women's Twitter on the first day of the NCAA women's volleyball season. Why do we not have a opening event for NCAA men's volleyball? Why do we not have a sporting event for NCAA men's volleyball to kick off the season? I think it would be great to have a pair of top 10 matches to start the season, whether it's in like Anaheim or whether it's in Long Beach or anywhere of that sort. I think it would be awesome. Now, maybe it's because of conflicts with basketball and whatnot, but I think we could find a neutral site to play in, or at least NCAA men's volleyball can find a neutral site to play in, have another AVC first serve challenge, but we'll see. We shall see what happens. But that was just my food for thought right there last Tuesday when I said, why does NCAA men's volleyball not have this? And well, we need NCAA men's volleyball to grow just as much as NCAA women's volleyball. But I digress in that regard. It's just me being passionate, wearing my heart on my sleeve, and wanting everything that is all that is volleyball to grow. All right, but that's my little spiel like there. And then one last thing before we officially head on out. This weekend, in terms of high school girls volleyball in California, there's the Dave Most tournament, which, I mean, The reigning champion is Cathedral Catholic. That's a good team right there. Mater Dei, even though they're not at full strength, that's another good team. Speaking of Mater Dei, they actually play tonight against Mira Costa in a rematch of last year's CIF Southern Section Division I final, and that's going to be a banger of a matchup. It would be even a bigger banger if Lely Ostavar and Wesley Matavao were playing for Mater Dei, but it is what it is, and Mater Dei, look, everyone's probably going to count out Mater Dei. Anyone that's a high school girls volleyball fan might count out Mater Dei, but I will just say, don't count out the Monarchs. I made that mistake last year, and I paid for it. Not big time, but I digress. But if you're interested in some high school girls volleyball, it'll be played at Mater Dei High School in Santa Ana. You'll get to see a lot of future NCAA women's volleyball players like Audrey Flanagan of Mira Costa. She's committed to Wisconsin. She'll be joining Charlie Furbringer in a couple more years. And then you've got some future USC players like Addison Cody. And then you've also got, Lily Ostavar's not playing, but for Bakersfield fans, Cal State Bakersfield fans, you've got Kayla Ostavar. UC Santa Barbara fans, you've got Ava Ostavar. Colgate fans, not the toothpaste, but Colgate fans, you've got Sydney Razuski that's playing. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. There's probably more where that came from. But honestly, if you're looking for some good high school girls volleyball, go to that matchup. Unfortunately, I will be at Long Beach State for Long Beach State Northwestern. So there you have it right there. So unfortunately, I will be missing out on a little Mira Costa, but I'll be seeing Mira Costa a little later in the season. All right, but that's going to do it for that little bit of high school girls volleyball talk. And ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it for this week's episode of Set Point. I really do appreciate everybody tuning in. I'm sorry for the technical difficulties. I'm sorry if my music was too loud at the beginning. For those that don't know, I actually record on my phone. So I'm sorry, Laura K. I didn't mean for the music to be too loud. I cranked down my phone all the way down when recording. So I promise you all, when it comes to the music, I wasn't trying to, but then again, I wasn't close in doing my intro. So there was that right there. But I would also like to thank my guest, Emily Ehman, for being a guest here on Set Point. Really appreciate having her yet again. She's always welcome back on the show. I appreciate everybody that tuned in. Ralph Calise also popped in. I forgot to mention his comment. He says, "Good afternoon, Teran. My volleyball role model. Have a great show." Well, if anything, Emily Ehman is the role model of volleyball. So I appreciate the comment. But special thank you to Bernie Bango, who was also in the live chat room, as well as on Dre Area Sports or the NorCal Sports Report. So for everyone here at IE Sports Radio and for my guest, Emily Ehman, this is Teran Rodriguez signing off. Have yourself a great rest of the week. Have a great weekend. If you're in California, stay cool because it is scorching hot. It's going to be in the 80s. So I will see you all next Monday for Set Point. I promise you all Set Point will be back on its normal time. This was just to basically accommodate with Emily Ehman's schedule. And Set Point will be back on its normal time to break down all things that is volleyball. And if you are going to be at Long Beach State, I will see you all at the Walter Pyramid at 7 p.m. for Long Beach State Northwestern. Have a great rest of the week. Enjoy the action. Enjoy all the volleyball. And let's keep our sport growing. Peace!
Yeah.